Welcome, and let us guide you through the Explosive Concoction of Destruction build for the Ascendant. Explosive Concoction is a very unique skill in a sense that you're prohibited from using a weapon, but in turn the skill deals more damage if it can grab a charge from each one of your topaz, sapphire or ruby flasks each time you attack. This requires top-of-the-line flask charge recovery. It's also one of the very few skills that can shotgun, meaning a single enemy will take damage from each projectile received from a single attack, and so you're encouraged to fire extra projectiles. It is of course all balanced out by the fact that each additional projectile consumes one more flask charge. The build revolves around generating flask charges, and you will use all the resources the game has to offer, as we plan to fire 10 projectiles with each attack, 4 times a second. We could select the Pathfinder class, but the Ascendant is overall better. It has great potential. You shall select the Pathfinder for their flask-related traits, as well as Slayer's AoE, Culling Strike, and Overleech. From a pair of Forbidden Jewels, you can then obtain Deadeye, Warden, or Assassin. The build's weak point is its reliance on flasks, and you can run out of them during boss fights. The skill has a quite high base crit chance and deals mixed elemental damage, mostly fire, with a high critical strike multiplier. Remember about the point-blank keystone? Try to reach nearly 100% critical strike chance. It will not only help you with damage, but also with generating flask charges. The build is very durable against elemental damage because you're using flasks for extra resistances. Damage over time is not a problem thanks to the Overleech. You have capped spell suppression, attack, and spell block chance. You're only vulnerable to physical damage. Clear speed is similar to that of Poisonous Concoction, but with no proliferation. If you want a better clear speed, use the Oriath's End Flask during mapping. Boss damage is good as long as you have flask charges, and sooner or later these will run out. Try to kill them quickly. Jewels and Skin of the Lords, which is optional, can be expensive. All the other items are cheap. None of the mentioned unique items are mandatory, but we do recommend the ones we've listed. You don't need a lot of resistances anyway, and as you can't count on your flask being always active, you run Purity of Elements, which definitely helps. Your only concern is gaining enough flask charges, which in the case of your items is found on medium cluster jewels and a belt. Svalin. Lucky block chance is a big defensive layer if it's capped. It's the main reason to use this shield at all. You can also put your elemental weakness gem here to save a button to press. Atziri's Reflection has tons of intelligence, elemental resistances, evasion, increased curse effect, and curse resistance. It's fine if you can't get Svalin. Skin of the Lords is a simple armor that increases the ever valuable skill gem level and global defenses, armor and evasion, by 100%. It is expensive, but you should get it at some point. Until then, just get something basic like Farrell's Fur, Carcass Jack, or a rare armor. The Tides of Time increases the effect of your flasks and grants you a lot of flask charges. That makes it a good candidate for a build that uses a lot of flask charges, but it's possible to sustain this charge drain with a good rare belt. Ashes of the Stars. Gem quality reduces flask charges used by Explosive Concoction. Keep in mind that you will probably fire 10 projectiles per skill use. Replica Dragon Fang's Flight could very well be the best and probably the cheapest option for an amulet, given you have the correct variant of it. Get yourself such a copy until you can afford a better rare amulet. You could, in theory, make use of 5 curses, flammability, conductivity, frostbite, elemental weakness, and sniper's mark, instead of 2. It's however a difficult task to actually apply all of them, as you lack gem sockets. If you can make it work despite of that, Anathema is a must-have. Socket Unnatural Instinct near Harrier notable. Starting in the center of a skill tree, it will grant you various stats, especially when combined with the Light of Meaning. Socket the Light of Meaning near Sentinel in such a way that it overlaps with Unnatural Instinct. It should increase your crit chance, which is hard to cap otherwise. Brutal Restraint. You're looking for the Balbala's Traitor Keystone for flask charges. Socket it near Fervor, notable for a lot of dexterity, and at least 2 notables upgraded with 10% increased flask charges gained to make it 100% with Alchemist's Genius on. This way, the stuff that grants you 1 flask charge will grant you 2 instead. Replica Reckless Defense grants you a lot of block chance against spells and attacks with no downside, as long as you have Purity of Elements on, which you do. Forbidden Flame and Flesh. any of the ranger's Ascendancy choices or Slayer will be good. Assassin could be another fine pick, get the cheapest pair available. Watcher's Eye, Flask Charge on Critical Strike Precision, is the best modifier to look for. You're also using Purity of Elements, where you may find a lot of Chaos resistance. It's a life build. Your armor is not very high, but you can increase it by investing in evasion, as you do have iron reflexes allocated. You'll only need a bit of suppression and block on items. Most of it is gained from passives. Look for increased flask charges gained and reduced flask charges used. For more damage, invest in gem level, crit chance, and crit multiplier. You will mostly deal fire damage, but other types are also noteworthy. On a helmet, look mostly for maximum life, chaos resistance, and maybe even accuracy, intelligence, and spell suppression if you need it. For the Eldritch mods, we recommend increased effective elemental weakness and a portion of physical damage taken as elemental. And besides the obvious defensive stats, there aren't that many good reasons to use a rare shield over Svalin. It's mostly maximum life and whatever you need the most, probably maximum elemental resistances, because you're close to 90% with flasks on. Boots. Aim for maximum life, movement speed, attributes, and chaos, resistance, or spell suppression. The Redeemer boots would be an excellent choice if you could score the mods for elusive and onslaught. If not, get the Eldritch mods for action speed and life regeneration. Gloves. Here you can get maximum life, attack speed, accuracy, attributes, and evasion or chaos resistance. For the Eldritch mods, try to get increased critical strike chance for attacks and increased effect of your marks. A rare belt offers maximum life, strength, and increased elemental damage with attacks. Micro Distillery belt, or any belt with multiple modifiers boosting your flask charges gained or reduced flask charges used, will be suitable. It can be a fine option if you don't want to use the Tides of Time. And the biggest advantages of Ashes or the other unique amulet over a rare one are the extra gem levels or gem quality. Only a very expensive rare amulet, one with preferably 2 levels to explosive concoction, will make it worth the hassle. On top of that, seek maximum life, attributes, and critical strike modifiers. Rings present themselves with a great opportunity for more maximum life, chaos resistance, and attributes. Reduced mana cost of skills, accuracy, and attack speed are other great options. Diamond or amethyst rings will fit the build well. Corrosive Elements applies all 3 types of elemental exposure, while Sadist increases your elemental damage by a lot. These 2 notables are the best ones you can get on a large cluster jewel. Widespread Destruction grants AoE, and that's the 3rd notable to seek. You need 1 medium cluster jewel with fasting and spiked concoction for flask charges. You can also get 1 more for projectile damage, or another flask flavored one, this time without spiked concoction. Now the flasks. You will use 3 of them to boost the effect of the traitor, but for mapping, where you won't run out of flask charges that easily, you can equip Orieth's End as your 4th flask. Dying Sun is a ruby flask, which is required anyhow, that grants you 2 additional projectiles while it's on. With your flask effect increased by 50%, that's 1 additional projectile. It consumes a lot of charges when drinked from, so for pinnacle bosses, you can replace it with a magic ruby flask. Use 1 topaz flask and 1 sapphire flask. Their suffixes should increase your critical strike chance and armor. The best prefix for them is increased charge recovery, even the one that reduces the flask effect, but only if you have the highest tier, that's the rationed flask. Explosive Concoction of Destruction deals mixed elemental damage with high base crit chance and crit multiplier, but makes it so that you cannot use a weapon. Consumes 1 topaz, sapphire, and ruby flask charge per projectile fired. Link it with Empower, elemental damage with attacks, inspiration, greater volley, and increased critical damage. As we assume your crit chance is high, the build just isn't good otherwise. Accuracy and critical strike chance, which precision grants, are very important in this build. Purity of Elements is used for additional elemental resistances and immunity to all elemental ailments. Tempest Shield grants more spell block chance. It would be nearly impossible to cap it otherwise. Link these 3 mana reserving spells with Enlighten to reserve less mana. If you still have some of it left, try to implement Arctic Armor into the build. Sniper's Mark. Marked enemy will receive increased projectile damage. Link it with Mark on hit and life tap support to cast it automatically and spend no mana on it. The latter can be omitted if you have good mana recovery. Molten Shell absorbs some of the incoming hit damage for a moment, or until it can take no more. Blood Rage provides you with Life Leech, attack speed, and frenzy charges on kill. It drains your life, but with Life Leech it is not a big issue. Link these with automation to cast them automatically. Shield Charge is the movement skill used to move around faster. Here we have also linked it with Power Charge on critical to generate power charges just by smashing into enemies. Link it also to Inspiration and increased critical strikes to gain these power charges more often and to lower the mana cost of the skill. Elemental Weakness is your second curse. It lowers enemies' elemental resistances. It has to be cast manually. Vaal Haste will increase your movement and attack speed for a short while after you've accumulated enough souls. Slay all the bandits to get an extra passive skill point. For a major god, we recommend Lunaris to map faster and to avoid projectile damage. When fighting a pinnacle boss, you should swap to Solaris. For a minor god, select Garakam, which reduces the effect of shock on you, makes you harder to kill in one blow, which may happen in the case of physical damage. And there's a lot going on the passive skill tree. The center is a setup for Unnatural Instinct and Light of Meaning. Then, start as a ranger and seek maximum life, critical strike chance, projectile damage, flask nodes, life leech, block chance, power charges, frenzy charges, attack speed, elemental damage, spell suppression, effective marks, multi-shot, and thrill of battle notables. Your keystones are the Magebane, Acrobatics turned into the Traitor, Point Blank, and Iron Reflexes. Your masteries are Life Mastery for 15% increased maximum life if there's no life mod on a body armor, 1% chance to block spell damage per 5%, chance to block attack damage as Block Mastery, 25% crit multiplier as Crit Mastery, 25% chance to gain a Flask Charge on crit as Flask Mastery, 10% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge when you hit your marked enemy as Mark Mastery, and 10% of Leech is instant as Leech Mastery. And that is all for this guide. Thank you for staying till the end. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. See you soon.